Next session now goes a bit beyond that and starts to look at some models and the situation in predominantly the farm sector in other locations. And then after lunch we'll move on to agribusiness, so beyond the farm gate. So this session now will be focused mainly on what's happening at the farm level and what the business structures and the financial structures are like at the farm level in some overseas locations. And we're very fortunate as our first speaker in this session to have Marcelo Guimaraes, who's from Brazil. Marcelo has a very impressive background. He's obtained a Bachelor of Economics in Brazil. He studied economics at the master's level at Y College in the University of London and has an MSc in agribusiness from the University of Brasilia. His professional career has included employment as an economic consultant in the private sector and to the banks, and with a national food supply company, and working with various Brazilian government departments. He joined the Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock and Food Supply, or MAPA, in the Secretariat of Farm Policy in 1997, and that's where he is now, and he's now the Deputy Director of the Department of Agricultural Economics. He's coordinated change in rural credit and farm financing, and those of you that are familiar with the history of Brazil over recent times would understand there's been quite a deal of change and turmoil at different occasions there, but more recently there's been quite substantial growth in the sector there. He's currently in charge of economic studies and analysis and farm information, and he's also Brazil's representative on the G20's Agricultural Market Information System. So to provide us with an overview of the financing and the farm business sectors of Brazil, please welcome Marcelo Guimaraes.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's really a great pleasure and honor to be here. I'd like to thank very much the Australian Farm Institute for inviting me for this meeting. I'd like to start by presenting you a very quick overview on the Brazilian agriculture. This is Brazil. It accounts for 48% of South American's area. And I'd like to show you the Brazilian farm occupation, some historical background on our farm activities. In the 50s, the farm activities were restricted to the coastal states. Then it expanded towards the countryside, southern countryside. And in the 70s and 80s, we started farming the Center-West. Nowadays, the most productive region of Brazil. And from 19s onwards, we also started occupying some other areas of the Northeast that are productive and very promising areas. And the Amazon, that area there is the tropical rainforest where there is no cultivation. Well, this is some basic farm figures of Brazil. It accounts for almost 6% of our GDP, 32% of our exports, and about 15% of our employment. However, when it comes to the agribusiness estimates, so it's an impressive percentage of more than 1/4 of our GDP, and it's very important for our exports. It's crucial, as we will see later on, and it's about 22% of our employment. This is the evolution of our grain production over the last 23 years. We can see that there was a very impressive growth in production, and this growth relied basically on productivity gains rather than in the planted area. This is our meat production from 1994 to 2012, and I'd like to highlight here the poultry industry. There's a very impressive growth. Here is the pork industry as well, a very productive one, and the beef. We had some, this fall here was due to price problems, so there was an increase on the slaughter rate. But nowadays I believe that our production is sustainable at 9 million tons, metric tons, equivalent carcass. This is, as Australia, Brazil is a large producer of sugar, made of sugar cane and ethanol. And we have two very limited periods where our production increased very considerably. Over the 70s, over the 70s here, with you can see, due to the pro-alcohol, there's a biofuel program, and after this, the long time of reasonable stability, it started increasing again due to this new ethanol program and biofuel incentives. Just as I told you, the agribusiness sector is crucial for our economy. It's the highest surplus. If not for the agribusiness sector, our economy would have had deficits over the last almost 18 years, if I'm not wrong. Well, it was just a brief overview to move to the agricultural financing that is our most important issue here. Let me present you a very brief overview of the historical developments of our farm funding schemes in Brazil. 65, we approved the basic law for the National Rural Credit System. It is our the basic mark for our credit schemes in Brazil. So whenever I speak about official credit, rural credit in Brazil, I'm talking about all the credit that is granted under the specific characteristics of this national rural credit system. In the 16th and 17th, the highly subsidized rural credit in Brazil was the main instrument of our farm policy. However, due to this highly subsidized scheme, what we witnessed was a lot of inefficiency and fraud. In the 80s and first half of the 90s, due to the high inflationary process that we went through in Brazil and the very serious fiscal crisis, we had to phase out these policies, and the minimum guaranteed prices became the most important policy for agricultural sector in Brazil. It was important as well, the creation of the rural savings account. I will go into details later. It was very important in terms of farm funding in Brazil. And I'd also like to stress the failure of all economic plans intended to curb inflation, that for the agricultural sector, it created a very serious problem of high farm indebtedness. In the 90s, the structural economic reforms were very, very important for us. A lot of deregulation and privatization were crucial for the basis to the development that we would witness 5 or 6 years on to this sector. In the second half of the 90s, it was very, very important as well, the economic stability. I would say that this was the most important fact behind the agricultural success in Brazil, was the economic stabilization. It was really a watershed in terms of the development of the sector, because it favored long-term rural financing for investment and funded by BNDES, that we'll also see later. That is the state-owned investment bank that is the source, is the main source for long-term investment capital in Brazil. It's very, very important for us. And in the past, it had no tradition of lending to the agricultural sector due to these problems. And as most of the investments in the sector were needed, but for a long time of maturity, there was no economic environment for this kind of investment. And so the economic stability, together with the BNDES capital for long-term investments, were also very important for us. And they also caused an outstanding rise on demand and rural savings account deposits, turning them the main official financing sources for agriculture. So in Brazil, as we'll see in the next slide, we have a very peculiar scheme for official financing. And as long as I know, this is a unique in the experience of the farm sector in the world. And this economic stability also created the basis for this high productivity gains in the farm sector because of this long-term investment and the increase on these demand deposits that funded the capital we needed to invest in this sector that we lacked in the past. So the agribusiness boom also increased the credit needs, of course, and as the government were not able to provide this capital for the sector, we had to create new instruments, basically those market-oriented instruments, and completely private. The role of the government was only to regulate and make the surveillance of this sector. It was no longer involved directly in this new bonds and securities. And from 2004 onwards, another set of important bonds and securities created together with the market, and the government was just helping them to organize themselves and regulating according to the needs of the government, but also keeping an eye on the necessity not to restrict the imagination of the sector to develop these instruments. So this is the evolution of the rural credit disbursement in real terms, in constant values. So from the mid of the 90s, as we can see there, nowadays we reached around $65 billion in credit disbursements, just in the official credit. So this is an index of credit evolution by sector. I like this very much because it shows very clearly that in this period, and even before 2001, at the end of the 90s, we could already see this performance. So it outpaced all the other sectors. But nowadays, we are experiencing housing booming in credit financing in Brazil. I hope there's no problem with it, but actually, the agricultural sector is becoming the third in terms of this index. But in the amount of resources, of course, it is among us one of the lowest. I'll try to explain very quickly something that is not easy to understand, but these are the main official sources for the rural credit. So when you have demand deposits on the commercial banks in Brazil, for monetary policy purposes, about 45% is kept under the central bank, is set aside for the central bank for monetary policy reasons. And now we have this 34% that is mandatory to be lent to the agricultural sector. Our law requires that at least 10% of the rural credit is lent to the agricultural sector. And however, in practical terms, what we have had over the last years is that this percentage has been kept at around 25%. And due to the international crisis, financial crisis, we raised these requirements for 1 percentage point every year. So it was in 2007, it was around 26, 27, and we started increasing 1 percentage point every year, and now it's steady at 34%. So, and this is rural savings. What is it? These are savings that are deposited in official banks. All the saving accounts in official banks are channeled to the farm sector. So, and the banks must lend at least 65% of this amount to the farm sector. Part of this amount is kept under the central bank as well, and for free allocations, just 5%. But even so, it's a great business for these federally owned banks, because they have a captive market for them. But as we can see, these demand deposits and rural savings, together they account for 75% of the total funding, the total official funding for the sector. Okay. However, as we can see from this slide, this credit needs, the sector credit needs, is much higher than what we can offer the sector. So around 40% of the need here is in reais, our currency. That is our estimates of the needs of the sector for working capital, basically. And so the official rural credit responds for around 40%, and this percentage has been steady over the last years, as we can see. These are the interest rates. Interest rates in Brazil are very high, as you must be aware. One of the highest of the world, probably together with Turkey and some other economies. And so nowadays we have this interest rate in terms of the central bank basic rate at 11%, and the rural credit is 5.5%. But however, as we can see for this producer support estimate of OECD, it is due to the fact that is applied only to a part of the whole credit in Brazil, and as we don't rely on other policies that require government support, the impact over the PSE of OECDs is low. So Brazil stands here around 5 to 6%, not as low as Australia and New Zealand, but lower than in other developing and developed countries. Well, let me speak very briefly about the role of the institutions in Brazil. This scheme shows that this National Monetary Council is the highest authority in terms of monetary and financial policies in Brazil. So and all the decisions of the Monetary Council are then regulated by the central banks. Then the central bank regulates this law and all these necessities of how to say, this directives to the financial institutions. Okay, then you have here state-owned banks. That Banco do Brasil, that is responsible for about 50% of the official rural credit in Brazil, is Banco do Brasil and other state-owned banks, and the private banks, which include also some co-op banks. And these, I'm sorry. And for investment, long-term capital investment, both rely on BNDES for providing farmers with credit. In general, farmers do not operate directly with BNDES. They operate through this private and state-owned banks. However, for large corporates, they can, farm corporates, they can operate directly with BNDES. Okay. Well, nowadays we have investment credit lines to the farm sector for basically all farm needs. So machinery, sustainable agriculture, soils, pastures, and also for commercial plantation of forests, cooperatives, all the needs of financial needs of cooperatives for investment, long-term investment, and even for capital needs, for working capital sometimes. And this is a new one, a new program, this Farm Technological Innovation. So we are very concerned in the government with innovation issues, especially those related to the farm sector. So how to integrate the farm sector into the new technologies and the new development actions that have been taken in the government as well. Well, I'd like to bring to you two cases of private farm bonds that were very important for our farm sector in Brazil. And what was the idea behind this new instruments, new monetary and financial instruments? The idea was to expand the source of farm funding by encouraging new private ones, as the government would no longer be able to keep financing the sector. So from middle of the 90s, we started creating this new instrument together with the private sector, studying and debating and approving these in our Congress. And they should be, of course, market-oriented. And the idea was to take a part of the capital markets to the farm business, because as the agricultural sectors was booming and was attracting much interest from investors, urban urban investors, the idea was how we can attract them to the sector, because sometimes they are not keen on investing in this sector because they don't know the sector very well. So the idea was to prepare some road shows to present these new bonds and new securities in order to attract the interest of pension funds, investment banks, institutional investors in general to this sector. And then I'd like to highlight here two of the most successful cases of this. The first one was this farm product bond called CPR in Brazil. Maybe some of you are familiar with this instrument. It inspired the Ukraine to create a new one, and as long as I know, it was ready to be approved by the government of Ukraine. It had already been approved in the parliament, and I have no news about this, but it was very advanced there. So what the idea was very simple. It was created in 1994 to enable farmers to sell their products in advance. So they are commodity referenced bonds representing this obligation to deliver agricultural products on an agreed future date. So for those farmers that don't have access to futures markets, it would be a simple instrument to make them to get the interest of in these markets, and also to attract interested clients. It can be issued by farmers and cooperatives and farmers associations only, and any agricultural product can be negotiated by this CPR. We have three types of these CPRs. That's in kind, that is the product itself, and the financial, so a payment in an agreement amount of money. It can be pre-fixed, post-fixed, whatever. And what we call the drawer CPR, that is an informal, that it's not registered. Basically, nowadays, what we have the most is the financial one. We don't have any longer contract of in-kind CPR. You see, if there is, it is very irrelevant. Most of the contracts are financial. And there are the drawer contracts. However, we don't know how much is negotiated under this scheme because it is not necessarily registered. It's something bilateral between the client and the seller. What are the main features, advantages? It can be endorsed, it's endorsable. It allows for many types of collaterals, and it allows for pledge of financial institution. And it can be purchased by, as I said, financial institutions, investors, trading companies. It's very important for, and very used by trading companies and input suppliers, and also pension funds and other institutional investors. And what is the main characteristic and the driving force behind the success of this instrument was that there is no acceptable conditional to evade the commitment to deliver the product or the payment. The issue may not invoke any kind of situation. So our justice has been very hard in order to make this, to oblige this compliance. And it was determinant and very relevant for the success of this, because it impedes the situation of a very opportunistic moment when due to high price increases or decreases, you can have an opportunistic behavior and then evading from this commitment. But our justice understood it, that it was important, and then it created a very strong interpretation of the law that there's no room for any kind of circumvention. And once registered, it is considered a financial asset, and as so can be negotiated freely on commodity exchanges and over the counter, and may be covered to provide higher security for investors. It can be covered by crop insurance and any other frustration insurance or performance insurance. And products are not pledged for any other kind of debt of the issue, and can be issued at any time. CPR is very flexible, and it enables better planning of activities and cash flow in general, as a conclusion. I would, I think yes, I have talked about this it's important, and as main uses for anticipated sales in exchange for inputs and trade companies, and selling to industries that wish to ensure proper commodity supply. It was more important in the past when there was a lot of transactions in kinds CPR. Nowadays it's basically on financial terms. If the buyer wants, as he agrees with a future price, and then he goes to the market and buys directly from any producer. And it's very liquid and an attractive financial asset. And there's another one that it's more recent, that is LCA, is a farm credit note. It's a bit different from this CPR, because it's issued only by financial institutions, and they are backed by agribusiness receivables. All kind of farm receivables can be backed as collateral for these LCAs, and can be purchased by financial institutions, investors, trading companies, input suppliers, and also pension funds. It can be traded in futures and commodities exchange, and also in over-the-counter markets. And these LCAs, they must be, it's mandatory, be registered in a registration settlement system and hold pledge rights, regardless of any kind of specific convention. But what is the main importance of this new bond? For investors, risks are related to the issuer bank, not to the farm sector. So regardless of what happens in the farm sector, the investor is secured by the bank. So if the bank has a good reputation and a good risk, so regardless of the risk in the farm sector, of the weather conditions or market conditions, futures conditions, he gets the money back from the bank. So but what really makes the difference compared as to the other bonds and securities in the market is that it's tax exempted. So when purchased by individuals, not by commercial investors, individuals like us, these bonds are tax exempted. So it makes a real difference. And for the farm sector, what is the importance of this bond? That it allows banks to raise new resources to fund additional farm business. So it has created a new source for raising funds for the agricultural sector. However, it depends on the regulation. You can turn it as mandatory, a percentage of this to the banks to invest in the agribusiness sector. In our legislation, it is said it has to be invested a percentage in the agribusiness sector. And what is agribusiness? Sometimes it's difficult for us to define it. So it's a supermarket that sells computers, for example. They can say, oh, it's a kind of circumvention. They can say, oh, I'm investing in the agricultural sector because I am financing this Carrefour or any other Walmart or any other big supermarket. However, in the legislation, we decided not to keep it very strict. So leave it up to the banks to define it. Why? Because at the end, we would know that even a small part of all this money that went through to the farm sector would be welcome. So the idea was let the market free, especially the financial market, to the banks, to decide how much they want to invest in which areas of the agribusiness they want to invest. And for those farmers that have a special access to this agricultural, this banks, sorry, and it's a very important source of financing, and it's like a pyramid. So it goes down to the basis. So it has been a very interesting experience and important source of financing for us in the farm sector. As we can see for this map here, this is the outstanding position in September 2013. It's $46 billion in the outstanding. It is almost the same of the $65 billion of the outstanding of the official rural credit sector. So while there we have about $65 billion, we just in this bond, the outstanding is 46. And how about CPR? We don't have estimates, reliable estimates for CPR because of the drawer, the informal CPR. But we know that they are very important for our markets as well. And the estimates vary across the institution. But we can say that it's more than $20 billion and less than 60 to 65. So something between these both figures. Well, for summary and conclusions, that until 1985, the Brazilian farm finance systems relied basically on public resources, official rural credit. That's the only source of financing for the sector. There are a lot of inefficiency and fraud, as I say. High inflation and fiscal crisis led to a series of problems, but on the other hand, created the opportunity for new market-oriented instruments. And since the 90s, the major part of the farm funding comes from the market source. Although official credit still plays an important role, it is still very important, especially for family farms and medium-sized farmers in Brazil. So in terms of the number of farmers, family farms and medium farmers are the highest majority of the farmers. However, in terms of volume of money, these few huge and big farmers are account for most of these markets. But for family farmers and medium-sized farmers, the official rural credit is the most important one, because they don't have access to international financial markets and futures markets. So it's still very important in Brazil. However, but they are not enough for the whole sector. Economic reforms, as I said, and regulation privatizations set the basis for this recent developments and were fundamental for the sector. Economic stability as well was crucial, and these private farm bonds play really a very important role for us. And what were the requirements for this in order to achieve success? It has to be clear, comprehensive, and reliable legal framework. If not, we cannot assure that this will work in this kind of markets. And the judicial institutions are also very important. So the understanding of the importance of this instrument, and that there would no way to evade to any kind of circumvention to this was crucial as well. And there has to be an efficient and low-cost system for registration settlement. So keep the costs low in order to make it more profitable for investors and not cost for farmers. And the bond itself shall not be very complex, especially for the CPR, describing basically the main points to the negotiation. To the extent of possible, bonds registered shall be exempted from taxes, especially if purchased by individuals. This really made the difference for us in Brazil. Okay, I'll keep here. Thank you very much for your patience.